Hi, welcome back to Chamber of Spoilers. Today, we're going to be talking about Black romance novels by Black writers. You might be asking, why now? It's March. Well, just because Black History Month is over doesn't mean we're going to stop talking about and supporting Black writers. Black people are Black all year round, surprisingly, and they do need our support, especially when they're in industries that tend to be biased against them. I do see a lot of people on Twitter talking about how during February they're fully booked up, they're super busy, and then March comes around and it's nothing. So it kind of reminded me that while it is important to place emphasis on people during months when they are being honored and appreciated, it's also important to year-round be thinking about the Black struggle and be thinking about how different our experiences are from theirs. Now, I am not Black. I grew up in a really diverse area, and I thought growing up that I had a good understanding of what it meant to be Black in America and how things were different for my friends than they were for me. And I thought, like, okay, I'm pretty woke, I'm pretty hip, I'm pretty with it. And then, of course, I went to college. I lived as a human being and watched the news and talked to my friends. And of course, you can't understand the Black experience if you're not part of it. It's just really important in my mind that we support and sympathize with our Black brothers and sisters and also do our best to listen to their stories from their perspective. I do read authors of all stripes, but I realized looking back at my reading for the past couple years, I haven't been reading as much by Black authors. And I was like, let's look into changing that because there's always something amazing out there. So this is a video in two parts. Firstly, some favorites of mine that are already out, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about some books coming out this year that I'm really excited about, or books that I've already come out this year that are brand new that you should definitely go read. So first, The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory. Love this book. Actually, it's one of those books that makes you think, I gotta read everything this writer's ever written. It's about a young woman who is proposed to in public, which is, as we all know, the third circle of hell. And she basically has to figure out a tactful way to say no and escape, and a really nice guy and his sister to help her out, and she and he have a connection. And basically what I really liked about it was it talked about female Black experience as a professional person just trying to live life, and also what it kind of feels like to be seen as a token by somebody who you're romantically involved with. So I really liked that. And also just the writing is amazing. A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole, which is the first in the Reluctant Royal series. I love this book. I'm not a huge fan of romance by deception, but I really enjoyed watching the heroine learn to trust somebody and build up that relationship with somebody. And I also really like kind of a finding yourself romance. I love a coming of age romance, which this really felt like for me. Fumbled by Alexa Martin. It's the second in the Playbook series. I love Alexa Martin. She's so great. I'm not a sports person. I do not watch sports. I never have. But I really love this series because it's really more about the people. Like a lot of sports romances are like, we gotta have those sports moments. But in these ones, it's really more about the characters, and I prefer that. And also, it's not glamorizing it very much. They are rich and they are famous and they do have these, fancy cars and nice clothes. But honestly, to me, it seems as though it's a pretty fair depiction of what it might be like to be a football wife or a football girlfriend or football fiance. Basically, just what it might be like to be involved in this huge culture that I'm not really familiar with. The reason that Fumbled is my favorite is because I think Poppy is such a great heroine. She's really independent, but she also understands when she needs help. And I really loved her and TK and having a second chance. Second chance romances are really it for me. I love them so much. And I also really love when young women kind of take their lives into their own hands. Poppy had choices to make when she was really young, and she was just like, I'm an adult, I'm a survivor, I'm gonna do it. And I really like that. Pride by Itty Zavoy, which is a Pride and Prejudice retelling. I'm a huge fan of Pride and Prejudice. I thought this one was really great because it brought in aspects of what it's like to be a rich Black person versus a middle class or a poor Black person. And I also thought it was just a really interesting twist because I do like to watch and to read depictions of Jane Austen novels that aren't necessarily as lily white as the originals were by virtue of when they were written and who they were written by. So that's really interesting. And also, it's just really great writing. It's really great characterization. I really liked it. The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. It is a beautiful novel in verse. It is really important to make space, in my opinion, for Afro-Latina writers. It's just such a beautiful book. I can't understate how gorgeous it is. I'm not really a huge fan of novels in verse. I personally don't find them to keep my attention very much. This book is gorgeous. It's beautiful. And I think it's won crazy awards, and it's very deserving. Elizabeth Acevedo has so much greatness inside of her. I'm excited to see what's next for her. She just had Clap When You Land out recently, and I haven't gotten around to it yet, but it looks amazing. And what I really liked about the Podex is that it also kind of covered that Catholic purity culture that I think is so pervasive in Latin communities, which I was never really exposed to, but I kind of understand by virtue of being a woman in the world and being able to connect that to the double standard in gender dynamics in Latin and Black communities is really interesting to look at. Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Barron. Great fairy tale, super adventurous. It's a Cinderella retelling that doesn't tread the same boards as you often see. It's super dark and very weird. I would love to see this as a graphic novel additionally, because it's so beautiful aesthetically speaking. It's also queer, which I love. It's really exciting to see a young queer woman of color represented in a mainstream fantasy novel. Fantasy is incredibly straight. It's important to have that representation out there, especially for young Black girls. In making this list, I found that I haven't read a lot of Black romance before the last 2 years, and even so, like the last 2 years have been still pretty fallow. And I've been reading romance pretty consistently for almost 10 years. So I think this says something about needing to make a concerted effort to try to consume more things that are outside of your comfort zone. So I have a list of books that are coming out this year that I've gotten advanced readers copies of, and I hope you like them too. I will put pre-order links in the description if any of these sound good to you. Pre-orders matter a lot for authors, so if you can, you should support one of these upcoming releases. A Low Country Bride by Preslea Williams. I didn't love the writing style. It kind of read very similar to me as Kimberly Lawson Robbie, which I don't really love the style that she has. Very expository. I did like the story, and I like the representation of chronic illness in the Black community, which is something that you don't often see. It's really great to see non-able-bodied and chronically ill people represented in romance because they do deserve love, and it's really interesting and important to see that portrayed, especially for our Black women. And that's out June 1st. I haven't read this yet, but I'm really excited about it. While We Were Dating by Jasmine Guillory will be out 13th of July, and I'm so excited about it. I can't wait to read it. It's on my queue. I will get there. I find her style to be so digestible, so easy to just read and get sucked into. And I also love her character. She has great premises. The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes by Zia Axelrod. This was a revelation for me. It is out May 4th. I loved it so much. It has all the things I love. It has people pursuing their passions. It has second chances. It has childhood sweethearts reconnecting. It has families that may not be great, like recovering from childhood. It's so great. I did not give it the best grade just because there are some things about it that I didn't love. I have a review about it coming for AAR that will be out when it's closer to pub date. Even though it wasn't perfect, I really did love it. I think it's a great book. I'm definitely gonna have to go back and read all of Axelrod's back catalog of books, because that's what I want to do when I read a book that I really love. I want to go back and read everything they've already written and just fall in love with all of it. But I love this story. I think that the main characters were so compelling and so great, and Toni, the protagonist, she is just so amazing. Like, you can really identify with her. You can really understand her struggle and see her ambition, and there's a lot of really great stuff in there. I think it's one of the best books that's going to come out this year. I hope it does really well. This isn't going to be a revelation for anyone, but Talia Hibbert had the last book in the Brown Sisters series, Act Your Age, Eve Brown, which came out a little bit earlier this year, so you can go buy it if you want it. It's actually been on the bestseller list, which is so great for Talia. I'm so happy for her. This book is just so amazing. It's so sexy. Just saying, very sexy. The protagonist is super lovable, and I just found Eve to be such a breath of fresh air, because a lot of the time when you're reading romance, it's really put together woman gets her romance life figured out, but Eve just has nothing figured out, and I really love that because it makes me feel seen. And I also really loved the male lead. A lot of the time you see autistic characters portrayed as robotic, and I really hate that. I think that it's so underrepresentative of the autism ASD experience. I find it to be pretty offensive, honestly. But Talia herself is autistic, and that's so amazing to see a writer kind of give a voice to a group that doesn't often get to tell their own stories, which I think is amazing. I love that the main character is kind of a gruff, angry dude, but he has so much emotion inside of him, so much love. I just think it's such a beautiful love story, and I think it's a worthy conclusion to the series. You should go buy all of them right now. Or get them from your local library. I love it so much. Also follow Talia on Twitter. She's hilarious. I'll link that also. The last book that I'm talking about that I already read this year is Concrete Rose, which is the kind of Hate U Give prequel from Angie Thomas. It's been going out constantly at the library, and I know why. It's because it's so good. in the similar way that The Hate U Give, I wouldn't describe it as a romance, I wouldn't describe this as incredibly romantic either. It's really a lot about like coming of age as a young Black man and figuring out your place in the world and coming to terms with the life that you have and the life that you want. And I think I really love being in Mal's head. I would say that if you're looking for a cut and dry romance, this is not what you're gonna find. I did find it to be pretty romantic overall. What we really need is good depictions of Black masculinity and romance that isn't afraid to love, that isn't afraid to be vulnerable. And I think that's really amazing about this. And I mean, Angie Thomas doesn't need my endorsement. She's doing very well for herself. I'm very happy for her. I think she just got a new guide dog. So you can go follow her on Twitter also to see adorable guide dog pics. In my experience, reading is one of the great ways you can develop empathy for somebody who isn't like you. And it isn't people's jobs to educate people about their communities, but it is a privilege to have a view into that community through books. And I think that that's a really important thing for us to remember. It's not anybody else's job to tell us about themselves, but it is really great when we can have a view into them and try to understand them more complexly. Because you can't get a view of any community by reading one book or watching Roots or having one Black friend. You have to get a more nuanced perspective. And especially in the times we're living in, it's really important to have that perspective and respect things that you can't understand and try to be empathetic to people who have different life experiences than you. Especially in the time we're facing, it's also important to support AAPI writers. In particular, my favorites are Helen Hoang and Roselle Lim. They're amazing. Melinda Lowe does a lot of really amazing YA fantasy. There are a lot of really amazing authors of color out there who need your support right now and who'd really appreciate it. So the links are in the description. Please comment and tell me some of your favorite writers of color. And if you have a book on here that you're excited about or a book that you've read that you love, comment about that as well. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.